And now let's continue our tour through Philadelphia, Pennsylvania with Luke Vargas, United Nations Bureau Chief for Talk Media News. Luke, we've already heard from two people, Jackie Coppell and Ben Dixon, sort of assessing the extent to which there were boos about Hillary Clinton during the convention, the extent to which protests were prevalent, et cetera, et cetera. What's your sense in terms of successfully attempting to unify the Democratic Party as to who did the best or worst job of yesterday's speakers?
Well, before we get into that, I just want to note logistically, and I've been up in the skybox here at the arena looking down at everything that happened yesterday, and it's worth pointing out that the Clinton campaign put a lot of states where Hillary Clinton has ties, Arkansas, New York, states that voted for her right up in the front. Donald Trump did the same in Cleveland. But off to stage right, I suppose it is, you had New Hampshire next to Idaho, next to Oklahoma, I think, all these Bernie Sanders states. And I'm not really sure what the thinking was there. It's sort of like putting all the bullies in the same row in one classroom. And lo and behold, when, 5 minutes into events, when the benediction was being given, that area was sort of the vocal center of all of the boos and stuff you heard through the rest of the night. So, if you wanted to try and minimize the impact, the collective potential for those people to make their voices heard, I don't think that was the best move. But I do think, you're looking at the program as a whole yesterday, that there was a lot of very careful choreography in the structure of the speakers. I really thought it was a good idea to lead with Diane Russell, the delegate from Portland, Maine, who was a big vocal Bernie Sanders supporter, and someone who didn't just talk about progressive platform. That was the biggest buzzword used last night, and a lot of people I spoke to here in the concourse level said, we find like people are pandering to us. They're saying progressive platform, progressivism, trying to invoke the policies Bernie Sanders stood for, but perhaps not fairly or fully. And instead, she came out there and she was talking about a lot of the other things about this campaign that have made Bernie Sanders supporters angry. She didn't talk about the Nevada convention, but she alluded to the problems with superdelegates, problems dealing with state party chairs. And you will fail to fully understand the emotions of a Bernie Sanders supporter if you only talk about the buzzwords and progressivism and the things that have been put on the platform, which, again, is not all that important. But by talking about some of the points of this campaign that made Bernie Sanders voters and delegates feel so angry and that the system was truly, even a Democratic Party system, was truly rigged against them, I thought that was a great person to sort of lead with and, to begin this long arc of trying to unify the party throughout the night.
My sense not being there is that were it not for the DNC email leaks, which showed that clearly the DNC was not neutral during the primary process, there would have been a much more positive and sort of let's rally around Hillary attitude. The polling showed that 75 to 85% of Bernie supporters had already come around to supporting Hillary Clinton, etc. So my sense is that a lot of the unrest that is going on is now bigger than Bernie and because of the DNC leaks. Is that accurate based on what you've seen there, or is that not even something that is necessarily on people's radars as much as I think it might be?
I think that's very fair. Of the interviews I did with people milling around yesterday before the main speakers began, I'd say roughly 75% of Sanders supporters were willing to say, hey, we're going to go for Hillary Clinton. We're excited to hear what she has to say this week. And conversely, on the side of Clinton supporters, I'd say about the same number of them were saying, look, we're not that afraid of his delegates. We think he's going to do the right thing tonight. This is not harmful for our party. There were a number of people who said, we're not worried about Bernie Sanders, we're worried about his delegates, or they said, he's been really, done the wrong thing. He hasn't sufficiently channeled this anger towards productive ends. But I do think the overall message here is that people are, we're excited to have Bernie Sanders on stage. It was an amazing optics to see this whole arena filled with signs for Bernie. This did happen 8 years ago when Hillary Clinton gave a primetime speech at President Obama's convention, and they filled the room with Hillary signs. So that was a nice thing to see, and it just, I don't think that the divisions are quite as deep as some have portrayed, and you sort of have to commend the audience here, which reacted enthusiastically to Bernie Sanders and did not attempt to silence the dissent coming from Bernie Sanders supporters quite the way we've become used to at Republican conventions, where it's, if anyone speaks ill of of the message that's being spoken on stage. It's chants of USA, USA, or people, covering up signs. People are not ripping signs out of people's hands. We may have seen that in New Hampshire at the endorsement event, and on video shared quite a lot. But that was not the attitude in the arena, and people were sort of willing to let perhaps the decorum build naturally instead of trying to shut down, attempts to inject the Bernie chant into the arena.
Well, 3 correspondents in Philadelphia all saying the reports of unrest and lack of unity have been, at minimum, somewhat exaggerated by some media reports, and Luke coinciding there. Luke Vargas, United Nations Bureau Chief for Talk Media News. He is also in Philadelphia all week. Thanks, Luke. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you, David. Bye-bye.